Council is returning to live meetings that will be held in the Highline Hall at the Wellington District Community Center for the foreseeable future. Due to COVID-19, only members of Council and some senior staff are in attendance, all of whom have been vaccinated. Social distancing, mask, and hand sanitization protocols will be observed throughout the proceedings. Members of the public who wish to speak at a Planning Committee meeting must register with the Clerk's office in advance. Tonight's agenda lists all the items before committee for consideration. Copies of the agenda have been posted on our website as well. The recommended motions on tonight's agenda are shown in bold. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed, and any participation in the meeting proceedings will become part of the public record. The recording from the meeting will be published on the county's website immediately and can be viewed by selecting the live stream tab on the bottom right of the county's homepage at thecounty.ca. Personal information collected as a result of this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making decisions on these matters. A consent agenda will be utilized for this meeting. If a member of council, applicant, agent, or a member of the public has a question or concern regarding an item that is included in the agenda, they may have an item pulled from the consent agenda. If an item is pulled from the consent agenda, it shall be discussed individually for discussion and voting as appropriate. If there are no objections to an item on the consent agenda, I will call for a motion to approve by unanimous consent the items listed. The minutes from this meeting shall report matters approved as part of the consent agenda. Under Section 7 and 8 of the agenda, the recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny a planning application. Council has the final say on the applications from the county's perspective. Following Council's decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal a decision of Council to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the municipal clerk before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Bylaws listed on this agenda provide the force of law to previous decisions. And I just want to make note that usually I would be wearing a jacket and tie for this meeting, but it is just a little too warm. So we'll move to item 2 on the agenda and the confirmation of the agenda. And as I understand it, the planner has some information to provide. Jaspreet, you were with us.
Yep. So I'd just like to withdraw one item on the agenda. It's item 8.7. Confirm the number.
And that is being pulled. So we won't be considering that.
That would be 107 claim.
8.7, only 8.7? Okay. So, Mr. Curtis, we need a motion to amend the agenda by removing that item.
Through you, Your Worship, we do not need a motion to amend. A report writer or an author of a report can withdraw a report at this point of the meeting.
Okay, so we can confirm the agenda as it's presented in the
Yes.
agenda. Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Prinzen, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Councillor Prinzen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a Prinzen Roberts motion that the agenda for the Planning Committee meeting of August 25th, 2021 be confirmed.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Item 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Does anybody have anything to declare? Seeing none, we'll move into the Planning Committee. If we could have a mover and a seconder for this, please. Councillor St. Jean, seconded by Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Your Worship. St. Jean Nyman motion that Council now move into Planning Committee for the purposes of hearing statutory public meetings with respect to planning applications held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that carries. I will now turn the meeting over to Councillor McMahon. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone that these meetings are public meetings as required under the Planning Act and will deal with the planning applications listed on the agenda. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the County of Prince Edward on the application, you must make a written request to the Clerk of the County of Prince Edward or make an an electronic comment on the application. So now let's move into section 5. It's the consent agenda, statutory public meeting items for consideration. And the first one up is 5.1.
Can you give me a second just to let people in? I apologize.
Are we fine there, Mr. Clerk? Okay, 5.1, file number B14-21.
Through you, Your Worship. Sorry, to Chair McMahon. I'm just letting in all the people for the information items tonight if they have any questions. So I'm just letting them into the Zoom call. So just give me a second to
Okay.
bring them all in.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm just going to for the
Okay.
Councillor McMahon, we're okay to start.
Okay, thank you. So, statutory public meeting items for consideration. The first item up is 5.1, file number B14-21 and Z15-21, Robert Brown, 587 Kingsley Road, Ward of Ameliasburgh, or Ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell. So, are there any members of council, staff, applicants, agents, or members of the public who have a question or concern concerning this item on the agenda? Seeing none? Okay, that will move us to item 5.2, consent rezoning application, file number B14-21 and Z35-21, Colin, Shea, and Veronique Dryden, 1460 County Road 19, Ward of Ameliasburgh. Again, I ask the question, are there any members of council, staff, applicants, agents, or members of the public who have a question or concern about this item on the agenda? Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 44 of our agenda, under the well supply and water interference, and this is just for clarification so that we know that the originally the 6-hour test for this well was scheduled for July 2020, but the water level in the well at that time was insufficient to provide sufficient immersion for the submersible pump, and then it was redone again in January in 2021 in frozen conditions where they could get it. So just so that we're aware that water may be a concern in that area, and that that staff or somebody follows through on this.
So you're just making a comment for clarification, is that correct? You don't want
Yes.
this item, do you want this
Well-
item pulled, or?
Well, I guess if you ask a question, I'll ask a question to staff, and yes, I'll pull it then. As soon as I ask a question, is that what we're doing now in these consent agendas? If you ask a question, it's automatically pulled.
Mr. Clerk?
Through the chair to Councillor Maynard, for this type of question where you're just pointing out something in the report or providing information to planners, that doesn't need to be pulled.
Okay.
But if you had a question or you wanted to
Well,
address something.
I'll take a comment for staff on the comments that were in that well supply, well interference evaluation.
Go ahead.
Regarding the fact that in July, they could not get enough water in the well for a submersible pump, and that the alternative well was salty.
Okay.
How do they
That's a pull.
how do they ensure that there'll be enough water?
So are you pulling this item, or?
Mr. Chair,
I'm
I'll pull
asking
it.
a
I have a
question
question.
Just pull the item.
I'll pull it.
Go ahead. Councilor Nyman?
I'll pull it because I have a couple questions. So it'll be pulled.
Okay. So that's 5.2 is pulled. Okay. Okay, that takes us to item 5.3, consent and rezoning application, file number B108-20 and Z90-20, Robert Greer and Paulette Greer, 574 Baker Road, Ward of Hillier. And again, I ask, are there any members of council, staff, applicants, agents, or members of the public who have a question or concern about this item on the agenda?
I'm Keith Watson, acting as agent for Bob Greer. We have some questions and we request that it be pulled and discussed later.
Okay, so done. Any other questions? Okay, that item is pulled. And that takes us to item number 5.4, consent and rezoning application, file number B78-20 and Z70-20, Dino Giscala and Jillian Anderson, 291 Arthur Road, Ward of Hillier. And again, I ask, any members of council, staff, applicants, agents, or members of the public who have a question or concern about this item on the agenda?
Through the chair, staff would like to pull this item for further discussion with council.
Okay. So that is 3 items that are pulled. Mr. Clerk, is that correct?
Yes. So 5.1 was passed by consent, and then 5.2 through 5.4 were pulled.
So I need a motion for 5.1, is that correct?
So we need someone to put forward a motion that item 5.1 of the agenda be approved by unanimous consent.
Okay, can I have someone put a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Nyman, seconded by Councillor Margetson?
You read it?
Yes, please.
That it's a Nyman Margetson motion that item 5.1, what was that?
Of the agenda be approved by unanimous consent.
There you go.
All in favor?
Thank
I
you.
guess
No
that's
problem.
carried. Okay. All right, so that takes us back to item 5.2. So can I have a motion to have this item put on the floor, please? Anyone? 5.2. 5.2. Councillor Margetson, seconded by Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a Margetson-Nyman motion that information report DS 167, 2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file number B41-21 and rezoning file number Z3521 be received, and that a report with a recommendation for a decision be brought forward to a future meeting reflecting the public feedback from this statutory meeting.
Okay. All right, so is the applicant or agent present? No?
Through the chair, to Ray Essienbra, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You are the agent for this file?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any additional comments you'd like to add?
Not at this time. I believe the questions were about the Hydro-G study, and I'm not qualified to answer those questions. We had asked the hydrogeologist to attend this meeting, but I don't believe he's here, looking at who the attendees are. So I can't answer those questions.
Okay, do staff have any additional comments on this file?
Through the chair, I'd just like to note that we are getting the hydrogeology report peer reviewed by Human Conservation's hydrogeologist, so we will be better suited to answer any questions once we get that peer review back, and they probably will note some concerns or any, if any, regarding when the water was tested and such.
Okay, does that answer your question at all, Councillor Maynard?
Yeah. Well, I guess it was more of a comment than really a question, that we take particular care in this case that there is indeed sufficient water on that lot, knowing that that quantity of water is of particular concern in that area.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none? Okay. Council, do you have any questions other than Councillor Maynard? Yes, Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think they can answer it, but I'm going to ask it anyways. On page 31 of the report, it's under the analysis, it says that the report indicates possible contamination. So I'm just wondering, there must be tests done now on the water that was there. Or can somebody explain that statement there? And what happens if it is contamination? What measures are going to be put in place for that?
Through the chair, so that sentence for the possible contamination was added in because we did do a brief overview of the hydrogeology report that was submitted, and there appeared to be some levels of E. coli and other sort of bacteria. So we are getting it peer reviewed by County Conservation, and they'll be able to guide us through what the potential next steps would be, whether or not this application is suitable.
Okay, can I follow up?
Follow up? Go ahead.
So just, I want to make sure I understand. So we're having it retested, and then County Conservation will direct the county on, or staff on, if the application can go forward, or is there measures that can be put in place, such as treatment on the well system? Can that be a condition?
Through the chair, I believe that depends on the level of contamination and what sort of steps were taken when testing the water. So that again involves a peer review of County Conservation to make sure that the proper steps were taken. And if not, then there would be a potential retesting of the water to make sure that those steps are followed and we have a proper understanding of the level of contamination and what kind of steps we can take to mediate those or potentially deny the application if not.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. So we'll take a vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5.3. All right, so I know the agent is here. Is the applicant available?
Yes, the applicant is here with me in my office. We're going to switch seats after I just briefly say a few things, and then I'll introduce Bob Greer.
Okay, carry on then, Keith.
Okay, so we feel that this is a unique situation in this particular piece of property. It's a 5-acre site, and it's rezoned for a rural residential now complete site. So basically, we're just going to split it in half. There's a house on one side of it, and then build or get a separate lot off the one end. It's not going to affect the agricultural land now. It's already severed. It's already it doesn't fragment more agricultural land. Like I said, it's an existing situation. It's merely an infill. The property's not being farmed now. It's and again, if the biggest complaint against this application is agriculture, this won't affect the agricultural whatsoever. And there will be no fragmentation of the agricultural land. So I just would hope that the committee would look at that practically and see if it can give a special consideration for this situation, and this would be the best use of that parcel of land the way it exists now. And I'd just like to introduce Bob Greer. He would like to say something if you may. Go ahead, Bob.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Bob Greer. I reside at 574 Bakker Road, and I've never done a severance application before, so some of this is new to me, so I may ask some questions, and I hope that I don't embarrass myself here. So basically, why are we bringing this application forward at this time? And just the official plan was changing, and I felt it was an appropriate time to take a look at possibly doing severance on this property. We've lived there since 1980. And also, as I'm getting older, I'm doing some estate planning and looking at what the future might hold for myself and my family. And it might be nice to have some of my family close. Unfortunately, with the rising property values in Prince Edward County, the only way some of my children will own a home is if I give it to them or help them out financially. So I have some questions and some things that I think will support my position, and I'd just like to discuss them and present them this time. I feel the property fits well for a severance, and we'll list some of the reasons why. Currently, the property is zoned rural residential, so housing is a permitted use under the present rules. It won't have to be rezoned. I believe the zoning is already correct, and the way I understand it, housing will be a permitted use. The property is presently 4.9 acres. I think you need 2 acres for a severance. So a severance could be permitted under the present rules. And number 3, being a rural residential zone, agriculture uses are not permitted. And I would just run that by the planner. Is that correct, Jaspreet?
Through the chair, the zoning of the property is what lists up permitted uses, and farming is, it's our rural residential too, so it's not a permitted use on this specific parcel.
So, there won't be any agricultural production lost, or the total acres farmed wouldn't be less. So the choices are, let the area proposed for severance grow up to weeds, which is the present case, or 2, sever and have the potential to put a house on the property at a later date. And I don't know, I know council's busy, I don't know if you've had time to look through all the information. There's an aerial map, and the proposed severance is on the left side, and I think you can see from above it's just grass and scrub. So I think it would be a good use of the property. On page 2 and 3 of the planning report, there's a section on the provincial policy statement regarding healthy communities. There are presently 4 houses along the north side of Bakker Road. From addresses 574, 626, 654, and 662. I've talked to the owners of these properties as well as some of the other property owners in the area regarding the severance application. None have stated opposition to my severance proposal that I am aware of. I try to get along with the neighbors and have been in touch with them on an ongoing basis over the years. One thing that might be helpful in the future, when you circulate people, if the applicant had a list of the people that were circulated. On the one report, it says people were circulated within 500 meters, and on the other report, it says 120 meters. So I've talked to some of the neighbors, but I just wasn't exactly sure who had been circulated. The four houses joined together to form a continuous line along the north side of Bakker Road. I'm proposing a severance between address 574 and 626 Bakker Road. This would not increase the rural residential footprint and would not take any agricultural land out of production, just fill in the vacant space. And for that reason, I do not feel the prime agriculture designation should be used as a reason for denial of the application. On page 3 of the Development Services report, there's a section on management of resources. The farmlands I own are presently rented to a farmer, John Bailey, who lives about 8 kilometers away near Wellington, Ontario. Mr. Bailey presently works at 4 farms on the Coal Creek and Bakker Road. I expect this relationship to continue. And again, granting the severance won't reduce the amount of agricultural land at all. On page 2 of the planning report, there's a reference to the Hillier landfill being 310 meters from the east property line. That's correct, that's where my house is. However, if you refer to attachment number 4, that would be this one. On the extreme west end of the property, there's a line which shows a 500 meters setback from the landfill. So there is a parcel and a footprint that is outside the 500 meter setback and would comply with the regulations. And I took a look at that and had Watson do this drawing for me before I submitted the application. And if we were inside the 500 meter setback, I wouldn't have brought the application forward. But I feel we can get a house built and still comply with the regulations. In summation, I would ask for your support and a speedy approval of this application for severance. I want you to know I spent a lot of time looking at my property to try and come up with a presentation that would be acceptable to planning and council. We've owned the property since 1972 and feel we've treated the land with respect and will continue to do so. I would like to invite any councilors with concerns to visit our property and take a look at the proposal. I'm available most times and can be reached at phone number 613-847-1713 by phone or text. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Okay, do staff have any additional comments to make on this file?
Madam Chair, no, none at this time. We are taking note of all of the concerns and comments made at this meeting, and we'll be bringing forward a staff recommendation at a later meeting.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm sure there's no one in the audience on this one. Is that right, Mr. Chair? Fine. Do council have any questions? No? Okay, I don't believe I put this motion on the floor. No, I did not. So, can I have someone put this item on the floor, please? Councillor Margetson, seconded by Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a Margetson Bailey motion that Information Report DS 166-2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file number B10820 and rezoning file number Z9020 be received, and that a report with a recommendation for a decision be brought forward to a future meeting reflecting the public feedback from this statutory meeting.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. So that moves us to item 5.4. This time I'll have someone put this one on the floor. So can I have someone put this on the floor, please? Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Prinzen.
This is a Bailey-Prinzen motion that report DS 165, 2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent and rezoning file numbers B78-20, Z70-20 be received, and 2, that a report with a recommendation for a decision be brought forward to a future meeting reflecting the public feedback from this statutory meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Okay. So, the applicant or agent present?
Yes, the applicant is present. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Dino Bianca. I'm a co-applicant with my wife, Joanne.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'll just take you off the speaker. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, yes, this is Dino Bianca. I'm the co-applicant with my wife, Jillian Anderson.
Okay, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make on this file?
So this is also the first time I'm doing this, so I appreciate the time for all the councillors and Mr. Mayor. Just to give you a little bit of background, we agreed last year, and we did this with our friends who are longtime residents in the county, looking to share a property. The property has been, to our knowledge, at least for the last 10 years with previous owners, not been farmed in any way that is no productive use, as far as we can tell. It just the grass is cut for hay once or twice a year. There is one, I should say there's one, the report states that there are 2 dwellings at the south end. In fact, there is only one. One of the dwellings was removed by the tenant that owns the dwelling, and in fact the dwelling is, just for clarity, is not a seasonal dwelling, no running water, no septic system. It's really just used for a handful of weeks a year by some cottagers, effectively. And so the intention was for, with our friends, to share the property, and we've proposed to sever a parcel at the north end, and given its size, we would be looking for rural residential zoning, with the remaining zoning for the balance of the parcel to remain rural. We have discussed extensively with planning support to convert significant portions of the land to environmental protection at the North Bay and Lake Ontario portions. And we've had County Conservation out there to demarcate the wetlands, and we'd be happy to give up that land for permanent and future environmental protection. We don't intend to build anything near there, and so that's just a little bit of background. Again, I'm new to this process. I'd be curious to know if there are any issues, as I understand, or at least read the report. There was nothing raised, but maybe that's my interpretation, so I'd be happy to be educated on this as anyone sees fit.
Okay, thank you. Do staff have anything to add to this report?
Yes, through the chair, staff have pulled this item to further discuss with council the presence of the Border Sessions Road at the end of Arthur Road, and provide and gain further direction and clarification on that road.
Okay. So is there, I'm sure there's no one in the audience, Mr. Clerk? No?
There's no one in the audience.
Okay. Do council have any questions or comments concerning this file? Councillor Maynard.
Yeah, just to briefly a comment where North Bay comes out almost to Lake Ontario at the tip. Is that? I wasn't sure where the applicant was talking about dedicating some conservation flagging wetland land boundary, because there may also be a requirement in the future along between there and the Quarter Session Road to have a more natural outlet for North Bay to Lake Ontario.
This is the applicant here. Yes, in fact, all of those lands that you just described would be part of the environmental protection designation in the future. Effectively, everything 40 meters north of the current wetland demarcation, which was put forth by, or marked out by Quincy Conservation. It happens to also coincide very closely with the 100-year storm elevation. And so all of those lands would be environmental protection.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Maynard?
It's just a comment, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
If you have to here, can I ask one quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, just the question regarding the quarter session road along the beach effectively. I'm just curious what the particular concern might be, if that's something that can be shared at this point. If it helps, we can be clear that we don't intend to restrict anybody from walking across the beach. We see that even though it's deeded to the low water mark, as we understand it from the registered plan, we see that as a public resource effectively. So because there is a municipal entrance to the beach at the end of Arthur Road, an extension of Arthur Road is public land. We don't have any problem with people walking across the base of the property if that's the concern that's being raised.
Okay, staff, do you have a comment on that?
Through the chair, more so my understanding that the concern is the fact that this Forest Essex Road has never been formally closed by a bylaw and is therefore still municipal property.
Okay. Councillor Bullock, you had a question.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I guess this is a question for staff. It looks like the property is currently zoned rural 1, which I understand does allow agriculture, and the applicant has indicated that it's actually being used for agriculture and that there's hay being grown on that land, which I understand is an agricultural activity. And the report indicates that the severance will require a rezoning. Can you speak to that, please?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. The separate lot would require to be rezoned to a rural residential use based on the size and the resulting frontage.
Right, which would not allow agricultural activity.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
The applicant here again, if I may.
Okay.
Maybe I don't understand the exact definition of agricultural use. There is a farmer that comes by and he is not being paid to cut that occasionally. I think he's done it once this year, and there is no, I guess if we could just let it stay and grow as tall grass. So it's not something that we are gaining any income from. We're effectively just letting the farmer come up there and do that if he needs some hay for his cattle. And so we don't see it being used as agricultural land, and just to add that some clarification.
Yeah. Councillor Bullock, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I think language is an issue here about actual use and zone use, and I guess there's some education needed all around perhaps, but the way I understand it, rural 1 allows agricultural use and other zonings, such as rural residential, that the severed land would prohibit agricultural use. Is that accurate? Just a question for staff.
Through the chair, under the rural residential 2 zone, it's not permitted non-residential use of agriculture. Under the rural 1 zone, a permitted non-residential use is agriculture. So the argument, the rural 1 zone does permit the agricultural use.
Okay. So it's permitted now, but the separate property wouldn't be permitted because of the size, and that size drives the zone. Is that?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Kate.
Oh, Councillor McNaughton, hidden in the corner there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to return to the Quarter Sessions Road. It seems to me that there's no problem leaving that Quarter Sessions Road in existence, but I'm just not quite sure what I've heard from staff and what their concerns might be.
So what is it you're asking exactly?
I'm asking Dale, just to clarify, there doesn't seem to be a problem here leaving this Quarter Sessions Road as is. But it seems to be, I'm just wondering if that's what the concern was, if that road should be closed and conveyed. But I'm not clear what the concern was. If you could clarify.
Through the chair, in terms of Quarter Sessions Road, staff are looking for the direction of council as to, I guess, what to do with the Quarter Sessions Road and what council is trying to intend for.
Okay, so you are specifically looking for input from council as to whether it should remain a Quarter Sessions Road or not, and as the applicant seems happy to have a Quarter Sessions Road adjacent to the property, I, for one, would support it remaining as is.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to call a vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, so that takes us where? Let me see. So do we have to have another motion, Mr. Clerk, to?
So at this point in time, we need a motion to resume sitting as council.
To resume sitting council. So, okay. So before we get there, within 15 days of council's decision, a notice of decision will be mailed out as prescribed advising of the decision, the conditions, if any, and the date on which the 20-day appeal period to the local planning appeal tribunal expires. If no appeals are received, council's decision is final. Any person who wishes to receive a notice of decision of council must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. So now I'm going to ask for a motion to move into room sitting as council. Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a Roberts-Nyman motion that Planning Committee now rise and resume sitting as council.
Okay, all in favor? That carries. And back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McMahon. So we're at the decision items for consideration, Section 8, and we'll start with 8.1. So I will be asking the same question of all these applications, whether there are any members of council, staff, applicants, agents, or members of the public who have a question or concern about this item on the agenda. Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this question will pertain to every one that's there, every report that's here. So I don't know if you want, I can ask it now then? Is that what you're asking?
This is the concerning... I will ask the question for every report that comes, but I'll ask it so that we can get one answer. And it has to do with the appraisal of the land, to see what it Okay,
so you get 5% of the appraisal for the parkland. I'm just not sure where that came from, so I'd like the answer on that.
Okay, well, then let's pull this item.
Then you'll be pulling every one. So I'm just saying, everyone has that. So can we get an answer for that question? Because it affects all of them. Or do you want me to pull every one?
So is your intention to pull every one of these?
Or just provide the answer now that will cover them all.
Yeah. Okay.
Or I pull every one. It's one or the other.
Okay. Well, let's proceed on getting the response to the question, and if it's the same question pertaining to all the files.
Yes.
Okay. And who is the question directed to?
Well, whoever can answer that question is where did that the appraisal for the land come from? Taking it that it is the the applicant that has to pay for that, and it's going into the parkland fund. So where did that, what happened to the $1,500 that we were just getting? And I believe it's, I can't remember what condition it is.
11.
Which condition are you referring to in item 8.1?
It's different.
Item 11.
Condition 11.
11 in
Okay.
that one,
Yep.
condition 11 and 8.2, condition 10 and 8.4,
Yep,
condition 10 and 8.6,
yep.
and 8.7 got pulled, so we don't worry with that one.
So the question pertains to clause 11 on 8.1.
Through your
Whatever,
worship,
whatever,
Michael.
Okay, we've got Mr. Michaud.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nyman. The change in fee was part of the fee structure that was presented to council back in July, or June or July, I believe it was, and passed by council in July. That changed the number of fees and added a bunch of new fees. The change in the parkland fee was part of that, and we changed the $1,500 to be more reflective by adding in this appraisal to the land. The $1,500 has been, I guess, in the works for part of the fee structure for about 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, and the $1,500 was simply out of date. So we felt that the best way to be reflective of today's market value is to have an appraisal of the land and take the regulated 5% that the Planning Act allows us to take.
could I have a follow-up?
Follow-up?
So, with that being said, how come we came to the percentage? Why didn't we just stick with the dollar value, put it up to, say, 2,000 or 2,500 instead of the percentage?
Mr. Michaud?
That could have been changed at the time that this was being reviewed and as part of the consultation that took place. It was never brought forward to look at something else. This is what was presented. This always will reflect the market value. If the land prices go down, then developers pay less or landowners pay less. If the market values keep rising, then we I guess get a greater share of the costs. This money goes towards the municipality into a fund that allows us to buy parkland if and when needed in different locations within the community. So it's a community benefit. It's not like it's going into a general coffers to pay for studies or anything like that. It is to be used to buy land for the benefit of all within the county.
Okay. Councillor Margetson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to acknowledge the comments from Michael Michaud regarding the development services fees that were effective July 31st, 2021. But I would like to make a motion to amend condition 11 of this report when the time is appropriate, because I believe this file was deemed complete prior to July 31st, 2021. And for any planning files that were deemed complete prior to that date, I believe that the applicant should have to pay what was in effect prior to that date, being $1,500 per lot. So when the time's appropriate, I have a motion to amend condition 11 of report DS 172 2021, which is item 8.1.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we've got to, I didn't get this onto the floor either. We went right into questions. So let's get this item put onto the floor. If we could have a mover and a seconder, please.
We're still, through your worship, we're still at the consent agenda.
Okay, but if Counselor
So we need to pull it, if that's what.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're pulling 8.1. So we'll go on to item 8.2. Is there anyone in the member of council, staff, member of the public who want to have this item pulled? And Councillor Margetson wants to pull that. So we'll move to item 8.3. Anybody? Councillor Nyman, you want to pull that?
Well, I don't want to pull it, but I just want to ask for clarification, I guess. Can we not deal with that, the appraisal thing right off the hop? Because if we're not going to deal with that right off the hop, then I will pull every one.
Well, that item has been pulled anyway, so we're going to be going back and talking about that.
But it's going to affect every...
That's fine. It looks like we're going to be
Okay,
dealing with...
I'll pull everything. I'm going to pull every one, so.
It's not in it.
So 8.3, were there any questions of members of council about this item, pulling it? Councillor Nyman wants to pull
Yeah.
that. Okay, 8.4
I'll pull that one.
and 8.5.
The agent. Agent would like to pull that one as well.
Yep. 8.6.
I'll pull it.
Sorry, 8.5 is, I'm the agent for 8.5. I'm not looking to pull that.
Yep. And 8.6, any members of council, staff, or applicants who want to pull that?
I'll pull it.
Councillor Nyman? 8.7 has been omitted. So 8.8, 8.8, don't think that applies.
If I may, my name is James Webb, I'm the agent for item 8.8 Picton Properties Limited. We'd be happy to speak to this matter if there was to be any questions or comments in regards to the staff report.
Okay, we will get to 8.8 in due course. Thank you very much. We're going back.
Nobody's pulled it.
Nobody's pulled it.
Not yet.
Discussion, then I guess.
I'll pull it.
Okay, but. Okay. All right, so we're back to 8.1, and
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, did 8.5 I don't think got pulled. One planner spoke up, but it was the wrong planner, I believe. So if I'm corrected, Mr. O'Connor is the planner for 8.5, and I don't know if anybody on council or any planner pulled 8.5, so that might have made the consent agenda, and I'd hate to lose the opportunity to have that approved under the new consent agenda, Mr. Mayor, so that's why I'm bringing that to your attention.
yeah, I think Councillor Nyman stated he wanted to pull everything. So I am making that assumption under
Yeah,
8.5.
I have a question on that, yeah.
Okay. So we'll go back to item 8.1. Could have we're going to have to put this on the floor, Mr. Clerk, each one of these.
Through your worship, that is correct.
So we need a mover and a seconder, please, for item 8.1. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Margetson. Councillor Bailey.
Your worship, this is a Bailey-Margetson motion, one that report DS 172, 2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent files numbers B1820, B1921, and rezoning file numbers Z1821 be received. 2, that consent files numbers B1821 and B1921 for lands located at 1788 County Road 7, described as Part Lot 5556, Concession Bayside, as in PE 136414 in the Ward of North Marysburg be approved, subject to the following conditions: 1 through 13, and 3, that zoning file number Z1821 for lands located at 1788 County Road 7, described as Part Lot 5556, Concession Bayside, as in PE 136414 in the Ward of North Marysburg, be approved.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go through the process and ask if staff have any additional comments to include with the staff report. Okay, thank you. And is the applicant or the agent present? And are,
Bill back here and the agent present, and I'm just not clear what you're doing over clause 11, condition 11.
This is an item that is going to be a question that is going to come forward from a member of council. So perhaps we can wait and see what comes up with that.
Do you want any input from us?
Concerning clause 11?
Yes.
Certainly, if you'd like to provide it, sure.
Well, I do believe the councillor spoke on the fact that these applications were made in advance. They were deemed acceptable, but not just that, they also, some of them have been bumped. This one was to be up in the agenda in July, and we got notes just saying there were too many applications, and so it got bumped on to this meeting. But during the process, because of everybody's issues, that I think the applicants tried to be patient during it, so it's no fault of theirs. But what I do want to address is this idea that it's a little increase from 1,500. Item 21 is surplus house being severed off, and it's going to be worth low 400, high 600 maybe. So 5% is a $30,000 increase in cost, which I don't think is thought through very clearly, but that's my comment. But we're very happy if you pull item condition 11.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk, I don't see anybody else in the audience.
Through your worship, you are correct.
Okay, so I will ask members of council if they have any questions about this application. Councillor Nyman?
Well, I just did, based on the numbers that was just there, and I did it at 400,000 for, at 5%, it's $20,000. I guess I'm just, I don't know, I have a, guess I'm kind of, yeah, dumbfounded, I guess, would be a good word, because I just don't understand how you go from $1,500 to $20,000. I just don't understand the rationale. Does it have to be the 5%? Can we not put it at the 2% or 2.5% or something like that?
Okay, now I think Councillor Margitson's motion is going to deal with this particular file.
Okay, I'll save my question till the motion comes forward, I guess. But can they answer that if we can drop that percentage? Like, does it have to be 5% or can it go to 2.5%? That's.
Let's see the motion that Councillor Margitson brings forward, and that may answer your question, or you may have other questions as well.
Yep.
Are there any other questions from members of council? No, okay. Councillor Margitson?
Okay, thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor, I have a question.
Sorry, Councillor Forrester. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I want to ask Chair Michaud. He said under the Planning Act, we are allowed to collect 5%. Is that correct?
Mr. Michaud?
That is correct.
So I guess my question, if we are allowed to collect 5%, with the way our land can be bought up and sold at wholesale, but I can say wholesale, extremely high prices throughout the county, and the need for probably parkland in the future, why wouldn't we take the maximum amount that we can underneath the Planning Act? And why would we even consider bumping it down to a lower amount? Just a comment.
Okay, I think this is a matter of the timing of the applications as to what's collected and when. So, Councillor Margitson?
Councillor McNaughton.
Oh, Ken.
Sorry, Councillor McNaughton.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just further to that, I do have some concerns regarding what Councillor Forrester said, because we haven't got a Parks Master Plan. We don't know what we're doing. We're sitting on a pot of quite a bit of money already, and while I do think it would be great to collect funds, because it's very difficult for municipalities to look for ways to generate revenue. It is limited as to how we can spend it. So simply getting as much as we can without rationale doesn't make sense. Also, I do prefer the idea of being able to look at something that allows more range based on affordability. So someone buying a $150,000 property, paying 1% is a far cry, is something that's affordable for that price range versus someone who's purchasing a property that's, worth multi-millions and subdividing it. So I just, for future, just regarding what Councilor Forrester had said, I wanted to add in a couple of other comments.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Michaud?
Yeah, just for the benefit of council through you, Mr. Mayor. When we talk about doing the calculation, we're talking about doing the calculation for the raw land, not necessarily if there's $1 million house on it and it jacks the price up. That's not what we're asking for. We're trying to appraise the land in advance of the severance taking place. What is the property worth? What is the land worth? Because that's what we have to buy. We have to buy land. We don't buy a house and buildings. So we want a fair value for making sure that we can go back if we need to buy land, and we're getting an appropriate amount of money from somebody else who's going to be impacting the need for parkland. So when we do the appraisal, we're looking at raw land. We're not looking at an approved property with the house. So, the notion of it being $600,000 per property with a house on it, well, discount the house, which an appraiser can do quite easily, and we have the land value, and whatever the severance is, we take 5% of that severed land, and that becomes the value that we accept as part of our parkland dedication.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, and thank you, Mike, for that explanation. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we approved this new deal back when we approved the fees. We might not have understood the implications, but we did approve it. And I think Councillor Margetson, however, has made a very good point that applications that were deemed complete and were filed in good faith before that time should be grandfathered at the $1,500, which I'm assuming, hopefully staff can verify that, includes all of the applications of this agenda, probably some coming up on the September agenda as well. But this 5% is not negotiable. We've already voted on that. It's just tonight whether we want to give exemptions for the older applications, which I would support if Ernie's looking for a seconder.
Yes, we are, just for clarification, we are looking at the applications that were submitted before that decision was made. Right. So we're not getting into a policy discussion because it has been signed. Councillor Margetson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, notwithstanding our debate regarding the percentages, all I'm looking for is recognition of files deemed complete prior to July 31st. So within that context, my motion would be that council recommend that condition 11 regarding payment of parkland dedication be amended for files B1821 and B1921 as deemed complete prior to July 31st, 2021 to 11, the owner agrees to pay the municipality with a check in the amount of $1,500 per lot as total payment in lieu of parkland dedication contribution of the new lots created through consent files number B1821 and B1921. If I could get a seconder.
Okay. Councillor Hirsch is seconding, so we've got this amendment on the floor. Questions? Councillor Nyman.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I'm clear then. So files that are complete, but that's what I was wondering. It's complete. I thought when we passed the OP, it was you got till, I think, whatever it was, July 1st or 6th or whatever, to hand something in. Now, we know that there was a lot of applications went in and were never looked at, but they were stamped they were in before the deadline, but they're not, might not be complete, so it should be the ones that were submitted before the deadline, not complete. That's, I don't know if, Aaron, you can make that amendment or not, but.
So you're seeking clarification about the date that this would apply, the
No,
application?
no, what I'm saying is, when we set the deadline, people were supposed to have the application in. But they didn't get looked at because of the volume that was coming in. So some of them might not be complete, but they were handed in before, I think, July the 6th. So, but what this motion is saying is, for the ones that were deemed complete before July 6th, but there could be another 50 that are sitting there. So it should be the ones that submitted before July 6th.
Councilor Margetson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was before July 31st when the amended fees and charges bylaw came into effect, but I would defer to Planner Michael Michaud, acknowledging that a file may have been submitted, but was under deadlines as far as not being reviewed for completeness. So, Mr. Michaud?
Okay. Wait,
Council, when an application is deemed complete under the Planning Act, although we had submitted earlier, when we deem it complete, the actual deemed complete date really reverts back to the time that we received an application that provided all of the appropriate documentation. So if it was submitted back in, I don't know, say January or February, but we don't get to it until March or April, and then we deem it complete, the actual deemed complete date goes backwards. It goes back to when they submitted and we had all the appropriate information. So when Mr. Margetson or Councilor Margetson indicates that the deemed complete date in advance of, I believe you said July 31st, if that's the date that council wants to go with, so if anything deemed complete before July 31st, will be subject to the $1,500 as opposed to the appraisal.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right. Is that clear? So just for clarification, on the applications in front of us, does that apply to all of these that Councillor Margetson has, that are being pulled for consideration?
Is that to me, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
Apologies, I wasn't sure. Yes, for all of the consent applications that require the parkland component, indeed, all these files would fall under what Councilor Margetson is put on the floor or is trying to get seconded for. There's also a couple of applications that got caught up in the confusion, I guess, that really are part of the parkland conversation, but I don't know if you want to change around some of the file numbers to get those sort of out of the way, and so those applicants can go home and not have to be with us any further. But anyways, yes, the applications tonight are all under that same vote.
Okay, so is everybody clear on that? Councilor Nyman.
Just one question. So was that date put in the motion or no? July 31st or no? Was that part of the motion? No. Is that the date you're going for?
Yes. Sorry.
I believe it was, but Councilor Margetson will read it again, or Mr. Curtis.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'll just comment that my motion said for those files as deemed complete prior to July 31st, 2021. And I think our planner just indicated that that condition for parkland, payment of parkland dedication applies to all the files where that condition is in there were deemed complete prior to that date, so.
Yes, I just want to make sure that date was there.
Okay. Everybody clear? Councillor Maynard.
Thank you. Well, I was waiting till the motion was on the floor before I made a comment on these, what was in front of us as the revised parkland fees. And I think confusion is a good word, and with everything that has come before us in the last couple of months, just to be clear that the parkland fund is used to buy new parkland. And in the rural areas of the county, we have not bought new parkland since prior to amalgamation. In fact, there are still some dedicated parkland reserves that were created prior to amalgamation, and there's clearly has been no need and not likely to be a foreseeable need for the purchase of new parkland in the rural areas. So I'll support this motion, but I'll also be looking to revisit that fee structure. If the parkland, dedicated parkland reserve allowed us some more flexibility to say replace equipment or to upgrade existing parks, then it might be warranted. But it does not. So the thought that we are going to be buying significantly more parkland in rural settings is probably inaccurate. So I will support this motion, but just to say, obviously I missed that in July because I would not have supported it at that time. So I will be bringing this back to revisit it. We've got parkland reserve that we have not been able to use. May be applicable in the urban areas where we actually might need to create more parkland, but certainly not in these for these rural severances. And I think the intent really is to have parkland that is somewhat close in proximity or in the general area of where the money comes from. So I'll support the motion, but also just to say that an increase of this size in rural areas seems to be somewhat unwarranted, since we can't spend what we already have in the fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about this motion from Councillor Margetson? No, so we'll vote on the motion. This is Margetson and Councillor Hirsch. All those in favor, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. So now we go back to the original motion as amended. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that is correct.
So I'll call the vote on that. All those in favor, please. And that carries. So that was a little bumpy. Let's see what happens with 8.2. And this has been pulled. So we will, let's put this onto the floor, please, a mover and a seconder. Somebody put this on the floor. Councillor Roberts and Councillor Bailey. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a Roberts-Bailey motion that report DS 169 2021 of Development Services dated August 25, 2021 regarding consent file number B24-21 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z20-21 be received. The consent file number B24-21 for lands described as Part 24, Concession 2, Southwest Greenpoint, Ameliasburgh, as in PE 107 111, be approved subject to the following conditions. Those conditions are 1 through 13, and that zoning file number Z20-21 for lands described as Part Lot 24, Concession 2, Southwest Greenpoint, Ameliasburgh, as in PE 107 111 in the ward of Ameliasburgh be approved.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. Are there any additional comments from staff concerning this file?
Through the chair, staff have no additional comments to this file.
Okay, thank you. Are the applicant or the agent present for 8.2? I've got Richard and Jillian Shaw down here.
Right, good evening. Yep, we're the applicants and we are present.
Okay, so you're in agreement? Thank you very much. And we don't...
Can I ask one question? This is a follow-up to the previous motion on 8.1, specifically to the clause 11, that motion will be carried on to this case as well, yeah. For the parkland.
That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and there is no one else in the audience who wants to speak to this item, Mr. Curtis? I don't see anybody, no.
That is correct.
Okay, any questions from members of council? Councilor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Condition 9, it states that a well must be on the severed as well as the retained parcel. I think the retained parcel is 18 hectares, which is a lot of land. I'm just wondering why we're asking for a well on the retained land at this time.
Okay, I guess that is to the planner. Is that you, Mr. Coffey?
Through the chair, staff are asking for a well on retained lands because they're likely to be used for residential use. We want to ensure that there's adequate water supply there on the retained lands.
Okay, thank you. And it's your question, Councilor Nyman?
Not really. You got a lot of land there, and I just don't understand why you...
Chair, if they do not produce 3 gallons per minute, they wouldn't meet the requirement under the official plan, and therefore we are asking for a well and maintenance as a condition.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Margetson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make another motion, and that it would be that council recommend that condition 11 regarding payment of parkland dedication be amended for file B2421 as deemed complete prior to July 31st, 2021 to 11, the owner agrees to pay the municipality with a check in the amount of $1,500 per lot as total payment in lieu of parkland dedication contribution of the new lot created through consent file number B2421.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about the amendment from Councilor Margetson?
I'll second it.
And seconded by Councilor Roberts, I'm sorry. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please. And that carries. And we'll go back to the original motion as amended. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. So we'll move to 8.3. And if we could have a mover and a seconder for this, please. Put it on the floor. Councilor McMahon, seconded by Councilor Roberts.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is McMahon-Roberts' motion that the report DS 160-2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file number B42-21 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z39-21 be received. 2, that consent file number B42-21 LaDucci and Burns for lands described as Part Lot 8 concession southeast of Carrying Place, Part 1, 47R9007, Ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell, be denied. And 3, that the rezoning file number Z39-21 LaDucci and Burns for lands described as Part Lot 8 concession southeast of Carrying Place, Part 1, 47R9007, Ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell, be denied.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional comments from members of staff on this application?
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, James Griffin, planner. Staff is recommending denial on this application as the applicants are proposing a regular shaped lot with minimal frontage onto a maintained road and with over 100 meters onto an unmaintained road being airport lane. The intent of the county district plan is to develop land in a logical order and develop land which has actual frontage onto a maintained road. As such, a building permit can't be issued unless it has frontage onto a maintained road. What this application is proposing to do is avoid the county policy manual, which staff use to guide the process. The policy manual would say when someone is looking to develop land on an unmaintained road, that they go through policy manual RD policy, proposed policy 715, which would be the proper process to open up a road, go through council, go through the roads department, and so the proper review could be done. In this instance, the proponent is proposing to avoid that by creating a plate-shaped lot, if you will, that would have a driveway that is parallel with the unmaintained road.
Right.
The driveway would be 10 meters, would go across the entire front yard of the existing parcel and be fully in front of the existing dwelling. And would be approximately setback 10 meters from the existing dwelling. As such, staff believe that this will create safety concerns, and if not consistent with the official plan, as the official plan says, when reviewing lot additions, to look at how the configuration will affect not only the retained, but also the separate lanes. So in this instance, it will create safety, maintenance, and bylaw concerns. Throughout the county and throughout the former townships, there was, especially in former townships of 20, 30 years ago, a lot of the regular shaped lots were created. And today, as many of you know, and we get bylaw calls all the time and complaints from constituents. When you create new lots that staff development in front of existing development or behind existing development, especially in the rural area, this creates a great deal of bylaw concerns. So as such, staff do not believe that this configuration is appropriate. I'd also like to note that the applicant's agent speaking notes state that there is a definition for flag lot in the county zoning bylaw. That is untrue. There is no definition for flag lot in the county zoning bylaw. Lastly, staff would just like to note that, again, we encourage for this proponent, if they would like to develop their lot, to go through the proper process, being the roads policy 750. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Clerk, I don't see the applicant or the applicant's agent present.
Brendan.
Is that you, Bill?
No, it's Brendan.
Brendan.
Oh, Brendan, I'm sorry.
He's in the dark.
Okay, Brendan, you're present?
I am present, thank you.
Do you want to speak to this at all?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Your
Okay.
Worship. My name is Brendan O'Connor. I'm a land use planning consultant. I'm here on behalf of the applicants. I'd like to first address the comments received by Mr. Fennell. In Mr. Fennell's letter, he notes his concerns regarding the subject property being converted to a commercial use. The benefiting property is an existing residential lot of record and is not proposed to change. At no point was a commercial use suggested or proposed. It's also important to note most of the neighbors and residents of Mowbray Road have supported this application and signed their names on a letter of support which was provided as an attachment. This provides me the segue into an important element of the application, which is its history. The benefiting parcel was created by consent by the former council of Hallowell Township in 1990. The lands were also rezoned to residential at this time, which was carried forward under the current zoning bylaw as a rural residential 1 zoning. What's important to note here is that there was intent by council of the day to create this residential lot. Under the current zoning bylaw, lots that front on 3 season roads are not able to obtain a building permit. With the benefiting lands being so close to Mowbray Road, the applicants are proposing the subject lot addition. The application for lot addition is looking to add a small piece of land to the benefiting parcel that will provide for a laneway to access the lot. In reviewing the provincial policy statement and the official plan, the following policies support the application. The 2020 PPS notes on rural lands within municipalities. Permitted uses are limited residential development and other rural land uses. The proposed severance for lot addition would be adding a small amount of land to an existing residential lot of record, again, that was created through consent. This would be considered limited residential development. The PPS also directs that healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas should be supported by using rural infrastructure and public service facilities efficiently. The subject application will support efficient use of rural services by utilizing a shared entrance. This will create efficiencies in both garbage, recycling, and mail delivery, as they all currently serve the existing entrance. PPS notes that development that is compatible with the rural landscape and can be sustained by rural surface levels should be promoted. The subject application will result in a lot fabric that is compatible with the rural landscape, as the benefiting lot is in existence and is residentially zoned. This is an existing part of the rural fabric and thus already is compatible with the surrounding landscape. The proposed lot addition will allow for a lane, which is a compatible feature for residential lots as it provides access. Finally, the PPS states development shall be appropriate to the infrastructure which is planned or available and avoid the need for unjustified and or uneconomical expansion of the infrastructure. The proposed application will not require an expansion of infrastructure, and again, we'll see efficiencies in the delivery of rural services, including garbage recycling and mail. The county official plan also supports the subject application as presented through the following policies. The pattern of rural development in rural areas section of the OP states that development will be in a low density in order to avoid overcrowding of rural areas and environmental problems with cumulative effects of individual servicing. The existing density of residential lots in this area will be maintained, as the subject application is for lot addition to an existing residential lot of record and will not result in the creation of a new residential lot. The OP encourages owners to incorporate the following design principles into the development of residential property. Place driveways along hedgerows, stone walls, or cedar fences, or at edge of fields, and use a common shared driveway to lessen the development impact wherever practical. The proposed laneway will follow an existing cedar rail fence and hedge. The applicants are also looking to utilize the 50 Million Trees program to plant a hedgerow of native species that will act as a buffer and be a net benefit to the environment, as a food source for both native species and as a wildlife corridor. The applicant is also proposing to use a common shared driveway, which is supported by this policy. Next, I would like to address some concerns raised by staff in their report. Staff note that the resulting lot configuration will create a private driveway that is parallel with an existing road, which they suggest is not efficient or sustainable development. I would argue the opposite, as having a lane parallel to Airport Road will have little to no impact considering the travel corridor already exists, thus creating a more sustainable form of development from a lot design standpoint. Staff also suggests that creating an irregular shaped lot with a majority of frontage on an unmaintained road will lend itself to future development. The official plan would not support future development of these lands, as there would not be enough area to meet the minimum lot requirements for both severed and retained. Approval of the application would actually hinder any future development, as the lands would have met the development potential. The staff report also suggests that a long, narrow flag lot will be created and should be avoided. The developable area is not long and narrow, but rather rectangular in shape and similar to many rural residential lots. The narrow portion will contain the lane and is appropriate in size for this use. The subject application would also not be considered a flag lot, as the zoning law defines a flag lot as the development of a house behind a house, where development on benefiting land would result in a house beside the house on the retained, which is typical in this area. The report also suggests that the shared driveway and lane will eliminate the usability of the front yard of the applicant's home and cause future bylaw issues. The application will not eliminate the usability of the front yard, but only the first 10 meters that is adjacent to Airport Road and Mowbray Road. This portion of the front yard is not used, as is immediately adjacent to both roads. Laneways adjacent to neighboring homes are common in rural areas and provide little concern from a bylaw standpoint. The applicants are also proposing a planting strip along the lane as further buffering. Finally, staff have raised concerns that the approval of this application will result in pressure for the municipality to cover the cost of changing the designation of Airport Lane. The application as presented is doing the exact opposite. The applicants do not believe it is feasible nor appropriate to upgrade Airport Lane. The proposal as is has no financial impact to the municipality, utilizes the shared entrance, and is supported by the official plan and leaves the Airport Road designation as is. There will be no future pressure, as access will be provided onto Mowbray Road. To recap, Your Worship, the subject application is for a small lot addition to an existing residential lot in order to provide access on the Mowbray Road. The benefiting residential parcel was intentionally created through consent by the former Hallowell Township Council and rezoned residential. The proposal I submitted will incur no cost to the municipality and is supported by the policies of the PPS and the county official plan and represents good planning. With this in mind, we respectfully request the council to approve the subject application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brendan, and my apologies again, you weren't down on my list as speaking to this item. So
Oh, that's okay.
I'll ask members of council if anybody has any questions, please. Councillor McNaughton, Councillor Harper, and then we'll go to the floor. Councillor McNaughton.
Thank you. I didn't have, so when I first saw this, I had no problems with this being a right-of-way. It's not, because we're dealing with an existing lot that's very close to that corner, it doesn't seem, it shouldn't necessarily meet the standards of lot creation today, and I think that's what staff were looking at. This is not a lot creation, this is an existing lot. And I don't think it's gonna have an impact on the neighborhood. I don't believe most of the neighbors think it's gonna have an impact on the neighborhood. And I see the lot addition as sort of a good compromise, actually. I don't believe once this is established that anyone's ever gonna blink an eye ever again. I think it has almost no impact on anyone. I understand staff's concerns, but when the time comes, I think I'll probably put a motion to approve on the agenda. It might be a second, or sorry, on the floor, it might be a seconder, but I'll defer to the rest of council having a chance to make their comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harper.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Actually, my question is for staff, so perhaps do I come later as opposed to now?
No, you can ask a question.
Okay, thank you. So back to you, James. You talked about a logical order in which lot design is considered. So and given some of the things that you said along with that, I get a sense from you that your idea is something could develop along Airport Lane. So its time will come for this particular severance when the rest of Airport Lane looks like it's worth constructing properly. Am I reading that correctly?
Through the mayor, that is correct. Basically, it is a parcel, but it may not be to the proper time or appropriate time to develop this land. And that's why through RV, the policy, that would allow council to review whether it is appropriate at this time for these lands to be developed and for the road to be open, or not open, but open to a year-round standard.
Just a
Follow up? Go ahead.
Yeah. So James, I guess if I look further north up Airport Lane, which I haven't, but if you have, I mean, what do you see in the future for the northern end of the Airport Lane? Can you see more development happening, at which point then this particular lot could be developed and made sense?
Through the chair, there are quite a few lots along Airport Lane. As the county develops, there could be opportunities for that. One thing I would note is it is dangerous to create this sort of right of way, if you will, even though it's not right of way, is the neighboring parcel to the north is for sale, and we've got lots of inquiries about developing it. It may not be appropriate right now to develop that, but with this application, there could be pressures to continue this driveway to that next property, and then the town go back into this situation where we're developing not through the proper processes.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have to admit, we have to give Mr. Griffin high marks for his spirited defense of the staff recommendation. However, I find I have to give Mr. O'Connor much better marks for the reasons why we should actually approve this. There are times when the playbook or the policy book just don't fit the situation, and I think this is one of them. And I would agree then with Councillor McNaughton that we should turn this recommendation around. I don't believe we can actually just approve it tonight because we would need at least a dozen conditions attached to an approval. It will have to come back to us. I guess if we turn down the denial, it'll have to come back to us at the next session. Anyway, that's my view.
Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll second Kate's motion, or Councillor McNaughton's motion. But I just want to make a few comments. I don't know if there's an answer or a question in there, but it is a lot of record, and I think I heard Brendan say in 1990 it was passed. So we're not creating any new lots, the lot is already there. It's just getting a driveway to that lot, and that's basically what they're asking for here. And we've been told all along now, what we're trying to do, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, is try to limit the number of entrances onto our roadways. Well, here's a classic example. We're getting another lot, but not another entrance. We're using an existing entrance. So I would, as I say, I'll support Kate's motion. I don't have a problem with this. It's already a lot, and, you know, past council has decided that, so we really have to go with past councils. At that time, they must have had good reason for it.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Maynard?
Thank you.
And Councillor Bolick?
So I guess for a question, if we were to approve it and then ask staff to return it to either the next council or planning meeting with the appropriate conditions, is that, how would we, I'm looking to figure out the actual mechanics of.
What the process might be?
Yes, the mechanics.
Through the mayor, staff, if that were council asked, staff would ask that they refer it back to staff to create conditions and bring it back to a future planning meeting to bring those conditions forward for approval.
Okay, just so that
Thank
we're
you.
clear that the intent, like how do we get in the motion that the intent is to approve it? So that staff doesn't bring it back basically the same.
Right, through the chair, the staff would ask that based on the, what occurred here and that it was denied, that council's intent would be for approval. So we would bring that forward with a bylaw and the appropriate conditions based on an approval recommendation from council.
Okay,
Right.
and I'll just say part of my rationale, I mean, this is an existing lot of record, not a severance. It's zoned appropriately, and I just don't understand why we would want to open up more road and maintain it when there's a viable option to not do so. And interestingly, I've seen, you know, a few years ago, in years past, not that many years, where staff have actually recommended approval of a lot in front of a lot with a shared laneway. So I think this is a common sense approach, and I don't think that that will necessarily tie us into any further development on Airport Road, because those lots would not be existing, nor would they be zoned appropriately.
Anybody else? Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Margetson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. Councillor Bolick.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Bolick, then Councillor Margetson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a question back to staff. What I can't get out of the recommendation is whether staff's concern is with the end result or with the process. I've got the feeling that staff's issue is with the process, that the applicant was using the wrong process to get this. I see Mr. Michaud's hand up, so I'll stop asking the question.
Okay. Mr. Michaud.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Council Bowler. I guess the question goes back to when this lot was created. To my knowledge, no evidence has been forwarded as to what the conditions were way back when. Was this lot to be created to front onto Airport Lane and have access on Airport Lane? I guess that's the question that, to my knowledge, has not been answered. And as such, whenever we create a lot, it should have frontage on a road. It shouldn't have this flagged lot. I know Mr. Connor has a different opinion, but this is a flagged lot. It's a house in behind another house, and I know that Councilor Maynard also talked about a planner previously supporting a flagged lot. Effectively, they are not to be supported. They are not good form of development, and we don't support that at any location. In most municipalities, all the municipalities I've been in 30 years, we've not supported any flag lot development for a myriad of reasons. But I guess the question is, in this case, just because it's a lot of record, and if it was created way back when, and we're not sure why it was created or how it was created, it doesn't mean that we automatically have to give access to that particular lot if we don't agree with the way that it's going to be provided that access. You know, the other option is it be severed back into or melded back into the original landholdings. Why should the municipality accept a lot that we don't particularly agree with in the end? You know, the idea of creating the extra road, you're absolutely correct. And if we do create the extra road, we do have the obligation to maintain that road, which is why we only sever lots on a maintained road, not on a laneway. And I guess if anybody has any comments in regards to knowledge of why this lot was created and was it supposed to front onto and access Airport Lane, if that was the original intent, then that's the way it should be. And then the applicant should follow our rules to open the road, and council can make a decision, yea or nay, on that. But just to provide access in this means, you know, staff don't feel that this is an appropriate way to develop land. That's why we've made the recommendation we've made. But we make recommendations, and council, you make the decision.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I see where this is going, and I think when we're starting to make decisions, discretionary decisions, because the severance is not an automatic, right? So we as council are making a principled decision, and I agree with Councillor Hirsch that Mr. O'Connor made quite a persuasive argument. But argument has to be based on fact, and you made certain statements that these things happen in the past. But we don't have the whole story. We don't know why, as Mr. Michaud indicated, we don't know why that lot is there the way it is there. We haven't seen the minutes of those meetings. We can't just assume that was the intent of the council that was in charge of the decision at the time. So I think that's why I asked the original question, you know, is it the process that staff has an issue with? And I think that's why we have these processes, so that we can make a decision based on the facts in a principled way, because it may make sort of sense based on Mr. O'Connor's argument today, but what do we tell the next proponent that has another thing that doesn't quite fit? So, you know, we've got paid staff, they gave us a recommendation, we've got to give that a lot of weight, and I would suggest that perhaps we should send it back to staff and ask that the proponent go through the proper process as per the policy manual.
Thank you. Councillor Margetson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, my position when I reviewed this is that I do not want Airport Lane to be brought up to a four-season road. The other thing that I wanted to, a comment I wanted to make is that the owners who are applying this, Mr. O'Connor is their agent, but the owners of the land that would be affected obviously support this. And then I look at what a lane beside the road would do. I don't see it having, in practical terms, a large effect on the rural fabric there. So I would support referring it back to staff. I'd like to see what they say about the retained, as well as, you know, their comments further to having a lot that's developable there. So I'm going to support the referral back to staff.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Excuse me, can I just make one note to the mayor?
Matt, sure.
The policy manual would suggest, and staff is by no way suggesting to open up the road lines, or open up to 2 or 4 seasons. Rather, we are suggesting the proper process is that if someone wants to develop on a unmaintained road, they go through the process to allow council to review whether it is appropriate to open up that 204 season. Staff are by no means at this time saying it is appropriate to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from members of council? Councillor McNaughton.
Just further to that, so question to James. James, so then functionally knowing council is unlikely to support the opening of or the development and maintenance of a new road in the county because we already have more infrastructure than we can manage. That is a de facto denial. Is that, I'm imagining that would be your sort of the direction that.
Through the chair, at this time, staff hasn't went through the proper channels to come to that conclusion. Council has not told staff or directed staff that is what would occur here. Again, it's just because there's a lot doesn't mean that lot can be built on. There's things and other things at play that need to be reviewed. So whether it's appropriate to develop, that's something that needs to be reviewed. So because it's an existing lot of record, it does not actually say yes, this lot should be developed. Again, I go back to just because there's a existing residential lot in a prime agricultural land does not mean it deserves to be it's in the agricultural lands, right? These designations, there's existing situations that need to be reviewed, and so this is one of them.
Okay. Follow up? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. With respect to policy and planner's jobs, I really respect that you're trying to apply policy as strictly and evenly as possible and to be looking to represent our policies as stated as they're written. But there's also something of there's also provided within the Planning Act, there's room for discretion to look at how that lives in the world and how that plays out on the ground. And once again, I think we're looking at a neighborhood that would be utterly untroubled as long as we don't open Airport Road. Some of them might actually want us to open up Airport Road because there are some litter problems there. Be some help for them to see less dumping. However, it maintains that quiet rural corner of the county as a quiet rural corner. So I actually do like adding some access for this lot and not even talking about Airport Road down the road.
Okay, thank
so
you.
I'm still going to put my motion on the floor when the time's right.
Okay.
Just like to know that yes, and again, I guess this is one of those processes. Staff have recommendation and council is equal to.
Okay.
Okay, it's that recommendation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Roberts, and then Councillor Maynard. And then
Thank
Councillor
you, Mr. Mayor.
McNaughton, I think.
My turn?
Go,
Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I agree with Councillor Bullock, and I guess that takes me to agreeing with staff, potentially. There are all kinds of precedents and consistencies involved here, not just for this council, but for future councils. And, when staff gives us some pretty clear warnings and policy principles that a building permit can only be issued when a lot has frontage on a year-round publicly maintained road, but the proposed lot addition is not consistent with the PPS in regard to having an existing road, that it's inconsistent with the official plan, that it has safety concerns. And then there's even some communications issues in this process. And I'm not sure that a mistake made by a former council back in 1990 should be justification for validating that mistake. So I think I'm I don't want to misrepresent Councillor Bullock, but I think his points are well taken, and I think we should be going with the staff recommendation here.
Thank you. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you. Well, we do issue building permits all the time on limited service residential roads, but maybe just to help wordsmith for Councillor McNaughton, if we had first clause be received, second clause to end, instead of denied, to say approved subject to conditions to be brought forward by staff at the next, and I'll say either the council or planning meeting as applicable. And then that would be the same in the third bulletin, that it be approved, subject to conditions to be brought forward by staff at the next council or planning meeting as applicable. Because then the intent of council is clear, that we are looking for an approval, and that staff then will have an opportunity to attach the appropriate conditions.
Is that language you're suggesting to Councillor McNaughton?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor McNaughton, you proposed this, so I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Councillor Maynard's wording. I had something similar that simply looked to meet some standard conditions to be met to the satisfaction of the director and Laguna, but I'm happy with Councillor Maynard's suggestion. I think that's excellent.
Okay, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, your worship, to the rest of council, I would recommend just referring this item to the next available planning committee meeting.
That would be the motion I'm putting forward.
But without approving parts of the report, So essentially what I would recommend is that the recommendation one, we just change the words at the end from be received, to be referred to a future council meeting, planning committee meeting.
And staff having heard the comments from council?
Yes, they've all heard the comments from tonight, but just referring it.
All right, so that's a recommendation from Mr. Clerk, that the motion be to refer this back to staff, come forward to a future council meeting.
That's not my motion.
No, I would suggest that's not the intent of council.
No, I prefer to adopt Councillor Maynard's wording, which perhaps she could outline again.
Yep, please do.
And I will have to make sure that I've still got a seconder in Councillor Nyman.
Okay.
Councillor Nyman?
Would you like me to read?
Yes, can we hear it first?
One second, please, Councillor McNaughton.
Yes, I will second it with what the Councillor Maynard had put.
Okay.
That's the intent of council, so.
All right, if you could read that, please, Councillor Maynard.
If I may, just to staff, once we make this recommendation, can it come to the next council meeting, or does it have to come to the next planning meeting? And then I'll put the appropriate wording in.
Mr. Clerk?
So I can't guarantee if it could come to the September 14th council meeting. I would just recommend that the next applicable or next available planning committee meeting.
The next appropriate meeting for consideration, yes. So whether it's planning or council. Okay.
Sorry, the next applicable, or I just want to know whether I can send it to council or whether it has to come back through planning.
So technically, right now, we are in a council meeting,
right.
So it could potentially come to council, but the agenda and how full it is and all that information, I cannot confirm whether or not we have space.
Whether there's room. Okay, so
all
the
right,
next.
And so the wording then would be at the soon, like, how would you like me to word it? Sorry, when it comes to the timing of the council meeting.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, well, I'm actually kind of on your behalf, Kate, asking the clerk.
I think for the sake of clarification, Mr. Clerk, it's the wording as to what the next appropriate council meeting is. Mm-hmm. We don't know what the schedule is for the September meetings.
I'm comfortable with the next available meeting.
So
okay.
Then let's put that that wording in, and it can be slotted in as appropriate and as staff deal with it.
And would the clerk like the rest of it to read?
Please.
Okay, so clause 1 remains the same, that report DS 160-2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file B4221 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z3921 be received. Clause 2, that consent file number B4221, Laducci Burns for lands described as Part Lot 8 concession southeast of Caring Place Part 1, 47R 9007, Ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell, be approved, subject to conditions to be brought forward by staff at the next available council meeting. And clause 3, that the rezoning file Z3921, Landucci and Burns for lands described as Part Lot 8 concession southeast of Caring Place Part 1, 47R 9007, Ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell, be approved, subject to conditions to be brought forward by staff at the next available council meeting.
Mr. Clerk, have you got all that?
I do, yes.
Okay, is everybody clear on the motion? We've got some questions. Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we have in there that no later than the end of October? That just gives it a timeline. I'd rather have a timeline in there too. So if we can just add those 3 or 4 words, no later than the end of October, I'd be happy.
Is that a question to
Well, if, I don't know, maybe.
the mover?
Councilor McNaught, or if we could put that in there, if you're happy with that.
That's fine with me.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Clerk?
I haven't.
Councillor Harper, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, I just sort of gotta go back to James, just so I'm 100% clear on something. What I heard you saying is, you guys are saying denial because we haven't given you direction on Airport Lane. And if we were to allow them to build it, we're kind of.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor? Are we
what
talking
point,
about, are we
please?
talking about the amendment? Is this to the amendment, or?
We are,
I'm trying to understand
we-
before I
we're-
vote. What,
yeah, we're talking about the amended motion, Councillor Harper.
so the approval council, what we're saying then basically is that there will be no more development in Airport Lane. That's what we're kind of agreeing to here?
At this time,
Is that right?
no.
No, I don't believe that is the case.
That's what Brendan says.
Through the mayor, go, from staff, this doesn't not allow development on Airport Lane. This is just for this person.
Councillor Bullock, did I see your hand?
You did, yes.
Just one sec, the challenge is, you're holding up in front of your face. If you could move it over to the side, it's easier to see. Yeah.
It disappears here sometimes.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Because it looks like we might be setting a bit of precedent and we are going against staff recommendations, I think it would be appropriate for this to be recorded.
Okay,
So
thank
I'll
you.
be asking for that at the appropriate time.
Any other questions about the amendment? Seeing none, I will call the vote, and Councillor Bullock has asked for a recorded vote on this.
Through your worship, just give us a second to get the recording vote input out.
It's not a good idea. We're doing what they did in 1990, making a bad decision that others will have to deal with. Was he awake?
Counselor Bullock, in favor or opposed?
Opposed to?
Counselor Forrester, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor Harper, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Counselor Hirsch, in favor or opposed?
In favor?
Counselor McNaughton, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor Margetson, in favor or opposed?
Favor.
Counselor Maynard, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor McMahon, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor Nyman, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor Prinzen, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor Roberts, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Counselor St. Jean, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Counselor Bailey, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Mayor Ferguson, in favor or opposed?
Opposed? I get 9 to 5, Mr. Clerk? So that carries?
Yep.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Confirm that? Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Clerk, at this point, we don't have anything to go back to, so we've concluded that item.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to call a 10-minute recess. So we'll come back at 9:15. Okay, so we'll go into recess. Thanks. And if you could confirm that the audio is turned off? Okay, thanks.
Just fair to those people. We need to revisit how much people are going to revisit it.
Do you know a guy called Jeff Jones?
I don't see that IDP land, like on the South Shore, the money. We've already voted on it. Yeah.
I'm a selfish piece of shit.
Although they didn't really say anything about it.
So you could
And
sell
when they
it.
compared municipalities, nothing said about what other municipalities charge.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Well,
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
there was nothing about that. There's a lot about all other fees, but not about parking. Well, it just didn't trigger. You're right, we could have scrutinized it a lot more, but it wasn't brought to our attention. It was a significant change. I mean, for me, it's hard to go through every little detail. Like, I try pretty hard. But I didn't notice that, like, the first time, and I went through, I looked at it again, I went back to the two reports, nothing said. There were a lot of other fees discussed. This is in the other fees category, but not parking.
West side. Yeah. You'd like me to miss it. Not much to see there. Wasn't really retaining the cool. Whereabouts are you?
Right there.
Walk here.
Do you vote no for that?
So you head up to Hillier?
It's a tough one.
No. Okay, I was just trying to get some advice.
And if you go to Eastern places, planes and things, it's not the end of the world.
I get
to check your, see how you treat our landscape. I love it. If it's a junk pile, I don't care if it's a nice lane, trees on it, I can't see. Lisa Burns, who owns that. She doesn't mind that lane going to.
Yeah, the air conditioning anywhere close to the air.
When they come back, I want to maybe we get one from reserve on airport. Like, there's ways of prohibiting them to keep asking for access. Yeah. Call it organic.
Well, you
you know more about planning than I do. I agree with you. The thing about human beings is we can justify anything. Yeah, or you cannot.
Okay.
I don't disrespect what you're saying.
You know, and I think that another thing is that there's a lot depends on the planner that you hire. So there's kind of good reason. A lot of float there.
No, not about us, not about us, that's what it means. Nice picture.
Yeah, it's in there. Official date or they wait until after
Yeah, she did. She did, yeah. Let's have a look.
in the fine print. Jackson. Not a full page, yeah. No full, they lost the full page on the back, no, that's for sure. She might have to see.
What ad are you looking for?
Some people think it's closed already.
Oh, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Along with his autograph.
No, just looking.
So, I'm trying to get the names off the calendar. Wouldn't that be very?
I don't think she's realized that she's lost the argument. The tide has turned. Thanks. Well, her long essay about how we're still.
Meeting back to order. Thank you, everybody. We are now on item 8.4. That has been pulled by a member of council. So we need a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor, please. If we could have a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor, please. I need two hands. Councillor Nyman, seconded by Councillor Prinzen.
It's a Nyman-Prinzen motion that report DS 173-2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file numbers B86-20, B87-20, and rezoning files number Z75-20 be received. That consent file numbers B86-20 and B87-20 for lands located south of 343 Mulberry Road, described as Part Lot 10, Concession 1, southeast of Caring Place, Part 8-10, 47R5094, Hallowell, Part Lot 1, Concession east of East Lake Athol, as in PE 56134, east of Traveled Road, subject to HW 18084 in the ward of Athol. Be approved subject to the following conditions, 1 through 12. That the zoning file Z75-20 for lands located south of 343 Mulberry Road, described as Part Lot 10, Concession 1, southeast of Caring Place, Part 8-10, 47R5094, Hallowell, Part Lot 1, Concession east of East Lake Athol, as in PE 56134, east of Traveled Road, subject to HW 18084 in the ward of Hallowell, be approved.
Okay, thank you very much. Staff members, have you got any additional comments to bring forward? Do we have the planners present?
There's coffee.
Nope, don't see planners, so we'll. Matt, are you here? No. Okay, so let's go to the applicant or the agent for the applicant, and they being present. And I've got Keith Watson and the Lars. Down here, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Your Worship, that is correct.
Okay, are they?
Keith he doesn't have his camera on and he's muted, but he is in the Zoom call.
Okay,
And
Keith.
the Lars are not in the waiting room.
Okay, Keith, are you present?
Sorry, try again. Keith, are you there?
Yes, Keith Watson is here.
Okay. Thank you, Keith. We're waiting for staff members, and they haven't joined us yet, so we'll go back to them. But have you got any comments concerning the application?
So we're now at 8.4?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to stick around tonight just to make sure that, as Mr. Margetson suggested, and we're delighted that this happened, that the parkland fee would be held at $1,500. We submitted this application in November. I know it's taking a long time for them to process, and my understanding now is that they were submitted before July 31st. Any application that was submitted would be back to the $1,500 rule.
Okay.
And I'm very happy with that. But if I may, while I have your ear, is if council's going to revisit that 5% in lieu of parkland, so the $1,500 that we've been paying for a while, and I'm sure people would be receptive to increasing that. But with this new formula, the $200,000 building lot, we're going to be paying $10,000 towards the parkland fee, and I think that's a fairly substantial.
Okay, Keith, we're really not getting into the policy discussion. We just need to be specific about the application.
Okay, well, I know this is in the application now that
Yeah.
that's part of it. I just thought, could you please invite me to the next meeting where you're going to discuss this, that whole 5% increase was a bylaw that was passed.
Okay.
Point of order, please.
What is your point of order, please, Mr. Councillor Forrester?
The discussion's still going on right now. This is not on the agenda.
I know it's
Every time this happens.
Councillor Forrester.
Remind us, Mr. Mayor, this is not on the agenda for even discussion right now.
I know, and I have pointed that out to Keith Watson, so we will drop it.
I apologize. I thought it was, we were discussing
No.
condition 11.
No, we're not. We're going to be discussing Councillor Margetson's motion, which will be coming forward, I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've got staff here. Have you got any further comments concerning this application? And I presume that's you, Matt, or is that Jaspreet?
No additional comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have anybody else from the audience, so I will ask members of council. Councillor Nyman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then Councillor Murray.
In condition 9, it says that the owner shall maintain a vegetation buffer between the residence and the roadway. I'm just, I thought when that came forward, when we agreed on that, that was the intent of that decision was for farmers, when they're removing their fence bottoms, the hedgerow, that's what that intent was. And I think the other one, in talking to Councillor Princeton, was it was intended for residential or urban areas, not the rural areas. So when the time comes, I'd like to make a motion to stroke that paragraph out of condition 9.
All right, Councillor Margetson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I was going to make a motion to amend the parkland dedication condition number 10, and that motion would read that council recommend that condition 11 regarding payment of parkland dedication be amended for files B8620 and B8720 as deemed complete prior to July 31st, 2021 to condition 10, the owner agrees to pay the municipality with a check in the amount of $1,500 per lot as total payment in lieu of parkland dedication contribution of the new lots created through consent files number B8620 and B8720.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about the amendment Councillor Margetson is proposing? I don't see any.
Do we have a seconder?
I'm sorry?
Seconder?
I'll second
Councillor Roberts. Councillor Roberts?
Yes, I second it.
Oh, seconder, so my apologies. Councillor Nyman, question?
Yeah, for clarification or process. Before that motion gets put forward, was there any other discussion on the motion, the original motion?
On the original motion?
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Nyman. So the motion that we're discussing is the amending motion. Once this motion's been voted on, we can go back to the original motion.
Yep.
Okay.
Any further questions about Councillor Margetson's motion? So we'll vote on that motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Now we'll go back to the original motion. Councillor Nyman?
I can make a motion if I want to make a motion to remove that if there's no other discussion.
Okay, any other comments about the original motion? Mr. Michaud.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I simply want to discuss a little bit what Mr. Nyman was saying about that one paragraph in condition 9. These new lots are going to be created within a fully treed area, and we're not applying the tree preservation bylaw as was discussed 4 or 5 months ago. This is simply a condition to indicate that when the time comes for a house to be built on the property, that they look at locating the house where there's fewer trees or there's dying trees, and that they protect the trees from construction activity when they construct the house. That's all we're asking. We're trying to preserve as many trees as possible on the site, and that's all the condition tries to do.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Nyman, any other questions?
Yeah, a follow up on that one. So on the site or on the road allowance? Because there's a difference, I guess.
And that's
well,
for...
They're unable to, and lawfully unable to touch anything on the right-of-way grounds.
Right.
Because that's city property.
Right.
Now, this simply speaks to the lot itself. It's a large lot, so they can, people site the houses where they think is best. But when you do construction, you want to protect the trees, and like any construction activity, when you're trying to protect a tree, you fence off the area that you want to construct in so that you don't have vehicles and storage underneath the trees and damaging roots and causing greater damage to the vegetation. That's why you bought the lot in the first place, I would imagine. So it's just putting a little bit more emphasis on tree preservation within the rural area.
Okay. Councillor Prinzen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on Councillor Nyman's, this is, to me, I guess I'm going to say it's a new paragraph in a condition. And if said buyer buys this lot because of all the trees, they're likely going to save what they want. So as this is not our county policy, I don't know how now it becomes into a condition. So I'm a little confused as to, yes, I like to protect trees as well, but it's not our policy. So I would second Councillor Nyman's motion to pull that paragraph on condition 9.
Okay. Any other questions from members of council? Mr. Michaud?
Yeah, just respond to you, Mr. Mayor. There is no need for a policy. Under the Planning Act, we can ask for any condition that we deem appropriate. We as staff deem this appropriate. We made the recommendation. Again, we make recommendations, and as council, you make the decision. We're simply trying to preserve as many trees as possible when we can. A lot of the lots that get severed are featureless or treeless in a lot of ways. Here's one example where it's fully treed. So we're simply trying to preserve the trees. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Nyman?
Yeah, I'll put that motion forward. I got a seconder from Councillor Prinzen that the paragraph referencing the vegetation buffer be removed. So it would be, I guess, the last paragraph of condition 9 be removed in its entirety.
Mr. Clerk, have you got that, or are you okay with it?
That the paragraph referencing vegetation buffer in condition number 9 be removed in its entirety.
So that, to me, is the 4th paragraph.
Correct.
Is that correct, Councillor Nyman?
Yes.
Fourth paragraph?
Yes.
Beginning with the owner shall maintain? Okay.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, so I'll call the vote on, are there any questions about this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote on it. All those in favor, please. 1, 2, 4, 5. And opposed?
I'll have a recorded vote.
Okay, recorded vote requested by Councillor Nyman.
Councillor Nyman in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Prinzen in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Roberts in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor St. Jean in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Bailey in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Forrester in favor or opposed? You're on mute, Jamie. Councillor Forrester.
Councillor Forrester?
In favor. In favor.
Councillor Harper in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Hirsch in favor or opposed?
Opposed?
Councillor Margetson in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Maynard in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor McMahon in favor or opposed?
Opposed to.
Mayor Ferguson in favor or opposed?
Opposed?
So, through your worship, I have 7 opposed and 5 in favor. What was this?
So it fails. Thank you. Okay, so we go back to the original motion now, Mr.
Your
Clerk?
worship.
Mr. Clerk?
Yes, back to the original motion,
The original motion.
You-
Okay.
as amended.
Your
All right.
worship.
Councillor Maynard about the original motion.
Yeah. Actually, it's about the, I know that we've voted against removing that clause, but I'm going to try that the owner instead of putting the word shall, that they endeavor to maintain a vegetative buffer. Because shall is is very prescriptive, so.
So is this a comment or?
No, this is an amendment to that the owner endeavor to maintain a vegetative buffer.
So you're making that motion?
Yes.
Have you a seconder? Councillor Nyman. Are you clear on that, Mr. Clerk?
So that paragraph 4 referencing vegetative buffer be changed from the owner shall maintain a vegetative buffer to the owner endeavors to maintain a vegetative buffer.
Okay, that clear, Councillor Maynard?
Yes, it is.
Any questions about this amendment? Councillor Roberts?
I'm not sure it makes sense to me, so I might be a party of one here, but if these are conditions, then they are conditions, they're not aspirations. And to endeavor is an aspiration. So I think it's just fine the way it is.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, we'll call the vote on this, this motion. All those in favor, please. And that's 3, so that fails. Okay, so
So
we'll
I'll have a
go.
recorded vote.
You'd like a recorded vote on
Yeah.
this? Okay.
Councillor Maynard, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Councillor McMahon, in favor or opposed?
Opposed to.
Councillor Nyman, in favor or opposed?
In favor?
Councillor Prinzen, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Roberts, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor St. Jean, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Bailey, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Bullock, in favor, oh, he's not here, sorry. Councillor Forster, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Harper, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Hirsch, in favor or opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Margetson, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Mayor Ferguson, in favor or opposed?
Opposed. So now we'll go back to that fails.
It fails.
So we'll go back to the original motion
That is correct, as amended.
as amended. All those in favor, please. That carries, thank you. So we'll move to item 8.5 concerning Margaret LeVay on Enos Street in Picton. If we could have a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor, please. Councillor St. Jean, seconded by Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a St. Jean McMahon motion that report DS 154 2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file number B9120 be received. That consent file number B9120 for lands described as Part Lot 883 and 903, Plan 24 Picton Part 1, 47R 2647 be approved subject to the following conditions, those being conditions 1 through 12.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor St. Jean. I will ask if staff have any additional comments concerning this file.
Through the chair, or through the mayor, I do not have any additional comments in regards to this file.
Okay, thank you. And is the applicant or the applicant agent present? And I think this is, I've got down that this is Mr. O'Connor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We've reviewed the conditions of approval, and we're in agreement with the staff report.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see anybody else concerning this. It's down the speaker's list, so I'll ask members of council if they have any questions. Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Condition 3, I'm just wondering what subsection 3 and 5 of section 50 of the Planning Act is. Can staff kind of let us know what that is?
All right, we'll ask that to the, Mr. Coffey. Can you clarify that for Councillor Nyman?
Through the mayor, subsection 3 and 5 of section 50 refers to the stamp which is put on the consent. So there are two types of consent stamps that go on the deed. One is for the creation of a new lot. The other is was referred to as an easement or a lot addition stamp, which is referenced in subsection 3 and 5 of section 50 of the Planning Act. So it basically says that you're not creating a new parcel, rather you're allowing the parcel to merge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Follow up?
Yes, one other question. Number 8. Maybe this is, oh, sorry, number 10. Where it says that the owner shall confirm the location of the sewer lateral, and I guess at their expense. So my question would be, do we as in the county not have that information on file of where the services lie for the properties? I know that if they have to get somebody in to camera that from the sewer main, they're $2,000 or better. So I'm just wondering if you can answer that.
Matt?
Through the mayor, we have a record up to the property line, but we might not have a record on the private side. So this is just to clarify that if it's found on the private side to approach on a separate lot, that they would have to be removed at their cost.
Just to follow up?
Yep.
So do we know that the lateral in the right of way is close to that property line, or soon to be property line, or is it in the middle of the property? Because if it's in the middle of the property and the house is in the middle of the property, chances are it's going straight in. I mean, they're not gonna, no builder's gonna dig a 50-foot trench to go 5 feet. So I just want to understand that a bit better.
Through the mayor, the opponent should call for locates and they confirm that our records are correct. I don't have our records in front of me right now, but if it's just a coverall in the event that it is found to be encroaching, that the applicant has to fix it.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody else? Don't see anybody, so I will call a vote. All those in favor, please? And that carries. Thank you. On to 8.6. If we could have a mover and a seconder for this, please.
I can do that.
Councillor Prinzen, seconded by Councillor Margetson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a Prinzen Margetson motion that report DS-174 2021 of Development Services dated August 25th, 2021 regarding consent file number B93-20, rezoning file number Z79-20 be received. And 2, that consent file number B93-20 for lands located west of 273 Chuckery Hill Road, described as part lot 119 RCP 26, Part 1, 47R, 3668, save and accept Part 1, 47R 5627, Parts 1 to 3, 47R 9016 in the ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell be approved, subject to the following conditions, those being 1 through 12, and that zoning file number Z79-20 for lands located west of 273 Chuckery Hill Road, described as part lot 119 RCP 26, part 1 47R 3668, save and accept part 1 47R 5627, parts 1 to 3 47R 9016 in the ward of Bloomfield, Hallowell be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Prinzen. Staff, are there any additional comments concerning this file? I'm sorry, Jaspreet, could you repeat that? We didn't quite come through.
Yeah, through the mayor, there's no additional comments from staff.
Oh, okay, thank you. And the applicant or the applicant's agent, and I've got Keith, it looks like you're here.
Keith Watson, acting as agent. We've read all the conditions, agreed with them all, and we're under the understanding that condition 10 will be changed as we mentioned earlier in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn it over to council. Any questions for members of council? Nope. Before I go to Councillor Margetson. Councillor Margetson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion to amend condition number 10. The council recommend that condition 10 regarding payment of parkland dedication be amended for file number B9320 as deemed complete prior to July 31st, 2021 to 10. The owner agrees to pay the municipality with a check in the amount of $1,500 per lot as total payment in lieu of parkland dedication contribution of the new lot created through consent file number B9320.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about Councillor Margetson's motion amendment? Seeing none? Question? Or seconding? Councillor Roberts?
I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please. And that carries. We'll go back to the original motion as amended. No questions, so all those in favor, please. And that carries. Thank you. So now 8.7 has been withdrawn, so we move to 8.8. And if we could have mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Nyman.
Your Worship, this is a Councillor Nyman?
Correct.
So second, thank you. This is a Bailey-Nyman motion that the report of the Development Services Department dated August 21st, 2021 regarding zoning bylaw amendment file Z3821 be received, and that zoning file number Z3821 for lands described as firstly part lots 20 and 21, concession 3, military tract Hallowell part 1, 47R 8984, except parts 5, 6, 7, 47R 9102, County of Prince Edward. Secondly, part lots 20 and 21, concession 3, military tract Hallowell part 4, 47R 8984, subject to an easement in gross as in EC 61487, County of Prince Edward being all of PIN 55056-0247 LT, and firstly, part lots 20 and 21, concession 3, military tract Hallowell part 1, 47R 8984, except parts 9 and 10, 47R 9102, County of Prince Edward. Secondly, part lots 21, concession 3, military tract Hallowell part 6, 47R 8984, subject to an easement in gross as in EC 61487, County of Prince Edward being all of PIN 55056-0249 LT be approved.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. Any additional comments from members of staff concerning this file?
Thank you. Through the chair, no additional comments from staff. The applicant's agent is present this evening and would like to make a few comments.
Okay, and thank you very much. I have down that we're joined by James Webb and possibly Jamie Chisholm. So I will ask them if they have comments.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is James Webb. I'm a professional land use planner. And first of all, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, can see and hear you.
We conquered technology tonight. I'd just like to add some very brief comments if I may. Again, my name is James Webb. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of the owners and the applicants in this matter, representing. I would like to take this opportunity to thank staff. We conducted this entire application virtually. I haven't had the opportunity to meet staff in person, but I'd like to extend my appreciation to both Matt Coffey and Michael Michaud for their excellent work collaborating with us on this application and bringing the matter before you this evening. I would like to indicate our full support for the staff report that is before you tonight, that is seeking approval of this zoning bylaw amendment. I won't provide significant background unless the committee should have any questions, other than to say that this development had received its initial approval some 5 years ago. It achieved its major milestone this year with the opening of the new Sobeys food store, which is significant and certainly a benefit to the broader community. And the application before you tonight is really just seeking further refinement of the current planning approvals that the property benefits from. And I think it was very well characterized by staff in their report that essentially the manner in which we're seeking these amendments is really just to be able to respond to market conditions and provide flexibility for the completion of the development of the property. There is no overall increase in terms of the scale or the amount of development on the property. The application for it really just fine-tunes some of the current permissions and provides this developer with that added flexibility. So with that, Mr. Chairman, Your Worship, I'd be pleased to assist the committee if there are any questions relating to the matter before you tonight. Otherwise, we would seek your respectful adoption of the staff recommendation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Webb. I'll ask members of council if they have any questions. Anybody in council? I don't see
Yeah, sorry, just-
any. Councillor Maynard.
Yeah, just for clarification to staff, like I read the changes, but we see the site plan. Is there any, like on, I don't even see what page it is here on my agenda, but where the site plan is there any significant, does this change the site plan at all? I see now we have 2 drive-through restaurants. I'm just wondering how these changes affect that site plan.
Matt, did you
If
get
you
that?
could put that in in layman's terms for me, please.
Yes, I did. Thank you through the chair. There are no changes to the site plan resulting from this application.
Okay.
There was a minor adjustment to the site plan that was approved to delegated authority back this spring, which allowed for the drive-through to get added to parcel A. But through the zoning application, there are no changes to the site plan, not just included in the report for information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please. Show of hands. And that carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Webb, for attending.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Have a good evening.
I'm sorry to hold you up as long as we did. We didn't anticipate the length of time in the other applications.
Sometimes we're lucky we get early and sometimes we don't. So your attention to this time is greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move to item 8.9. If we could have a mover and a seconder for this, please.
You got it.
Councillor St. Jean, seconded by Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Your Worship. St. Jean Roberts, motion that the items approved under delegated authority bylaw 98-2020 be received for information.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please. And that carries. Decision items for consideration. I think we're through that, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, you are correct.
So we're moving on to bylaws for consideration. If we could have a mover and a seconder for this, please. And again, we'll read the bylaws in full. Councillor Margetson, seconded by Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, it's a Margaretson Bailey motion that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. 10.1.1, a bylaw to amend the County of Prince Edward Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw as amended. 1788 County Road 7. 10.1.2, a bylaw to amend the County of Prince Edward Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 1816-2006 as amended for 1997 Fry Road. And 10.1.3, a bylaw to amend the County of Prince Edward Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 1816-2006 as amended, south of 343 Mowbray Road. And 10.1.4, a bylaw to amend the County of Prince Edward Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 1816-2006 as amended, west of 273 Chuckery Hill Road. And 10.1.6, a bylaw to amend the County of Prince Edward Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 1816-2006 as amended, 13300 Loyalist Parkway.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor, please. And that carries. Item 11, confirmatory bylaw. Mover and the seconder, please. Councillor Maynard and Councillor St. Jean.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maynard St. Jean motion that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. A bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Prince Edward at the meeting held on August 25th, 2021.
Thank you. All those in favor? That carries. And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Prinzen, seconded by Councillor Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a Prince and Nyman motion that this meeting now adjourn at 9:54 p.m.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much, everybody. We are adjourned.